Mastering English Through Cooking: How I Became Fluent in the Kitchen. Welcome to Smart English Start. If you've ever felt stuck in your English learning journey, this series is for you. We share real stories of English learners who found unique ways to become fluent, not through textbooks, but through real-life experiences. Today's story is about Isabella Silva, a chef from São Paulo, Brazil, who moved to New York City to work in a high-end restaurant. She thought her English was good enough until she stepped into a fast-paced American kitchen. Between the rapid-fire instructions, slang used by chefs, and customers' food requests, she struggled to keep up. She realized that understanding English in a classroom was one thing, but using it in a high-pressure environment was something completely different. Let's dive into her journey, how she went from misunderstanding orders and feeling lost to commanding her own kitchen in English with confidence. Episode 1: Struggling to Keep Up in an English-Speaking Kitchen.
Hello, my name is Isabella Silva, and this is my journey to English fluency. I grew up in São Paulo, Brazil, where I trained as a chef. Portuguese is my native language, and while I had studied English, I had never needed to use it under pressure. Then I moved to New York City to work at a high-end restaurant. I thought I was ready. After all, I could read recipes, understand menus, and hold casual conversations. But the moment I stepped into an American kitchen, I realized something. Classroom English and real-world English were two completely different things. My first day in a New York kitchen. My first shift started with panic. The head chef, James, shouted, "Isabella, fire 2 ribeyes medium rare, and get me a side of mash on the fly." I froze. Fire. On the fly. I understood ribeyes and medium rare, but not the rest. Was I supposed to start cooking? Wait, grab potatoes? James shouted, "Move, move, move." That's when I knew, if I didn't learn kitchen English fast, I wouldn't last a week. Why kitchen English is so different? In daily life, I could follow English conversations, but in the kitchen, it was a different world. Orders were shouted, not written. Everything was fast. No time for explanations. Chefs use slang. Fire meant start cooking. On the fly meant make it fast. If I didn't understand instantly, I slowed the whole kitchen down. By the end of my shift, I wasn't just physically exhausted, I was mentally drained from trying to keep up. My first big mistake. A few days later, I made my first major mistake. A waiter ran in and yelled, "Table 5 needs their pasta refired. It's dying in the window." I panicked. I knew table 5 and pasta, but refire? Dying? I assumed it meant making a new dish, so I started from scratch. Minutes later, James stormed over. "Isabella, refire means reheat, not remake." The customer had to wait longer because of me. I felt humiliated. That night, I told myself, I need to learn kitchen English fast. The turning point. My plan to learn kitchen English. I had no time for English lessons. I worked 12-hour shifts, so I made a plan. Write down new kitchen terms and study them every night. Listen carefully and repeat instructions in my head before acting. Ask my coworkers to explain slang without fear of looking stupid. I wasn't just learning English, I was learning the language of the kitchen. And little by little, things started to change. Episode 2: Training myself to understand fast kitchen English. I knew that if I wanted to survive in a New York kitchen, I needed to train my ears to keep up with the speed of English. I didn't have time for formal lessons, so I created my own way to learn. I memorized common kitchen phrases. I wrote them down every night and repeated them in my head during my shift. I trained my listening skills by shadowing my coworkers. I listened to how they spoke and repeated their words quietly to myself. I watched cooking shows like Hell's Kitchen and Chef's Table to hear how real chefs gave instructions. Little by little, I stopped feeling lost and started feeling like part of the team. Understanding kitchen slang. I quickly realized that kitchen English is full of slang. If I wanted to understand my team, I needed to learn it fast. Here are some of the phrases that confused me at first, and what they actually meant. 86 that, "Stop making that dish, it's sold out or canceled." All day. the total number of a dish needed at that moment. In the weeds, someone is completely overwhelmed. Behind, a warning to others that you're walking behind them. Drop the fries, start frying the potatoes now. One day, James shouted, 86 the salmon, switch to halibut. At first I thought, wait, 86 what? But then I remembered my notes and I understood we were out of salmon, so I needed to cook halibut instead. For the first time I reacted immediately and I felt a huge sense of victory. The moment I kept up for the first time. A few weeks later I had my first real test. A rush of orders came in, and the kitchen turned into organized chaos. The sous chef called out, "Table 7 needs 2 steaks, 1 rare, 1 medium. Drop fries on the fly, and fire 2 salmon all day." Before I would have frozen, but this time I didn't hesitate. I repeated the order in my head while working. I moved fast without overthinking. I understood everything without needing to translate. For the first time, I kept up without getting lost. James looked over at me and nodded. "Nice work, Isabella." It was just 2 words, but for me it meant I had finally earned my place in the kitchen. What I learned about understanding fast English. By the time my shift ended that night, I realized something. Fluency isn't just about words. It's about reacting instantly. You don't need to understand every word, just the key message. Listening every day in real situations is the fastest way to improve. I was still learning, but I had reached an important milestone. I no longer felt lost. Episode 3: Learning to give orders with confidence. I had finally learned how to understand fast kitchen English, but there was still one big challenge. I was only listening and following orders. If I wanted to grow as a chef, I needed to speak up, give instructions, and manage my station confidently. But I had a problem. Every time I tried to give an order, I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I was saying things the right way, and I worried that my accent made me sound unsure. In the kitchen, confidence is everything. If I didn't sound sure of myself, people wouldn't take me seriously. How I trained myself to speak like a chef. I knew I had to change something, so I created a 3-step plan to train my speaking skills. Step 1. I practiced giving orders out loud at home. Every night, I stood in my kitchen and practiced saying orders in a strong, clear voice. I used real phrases I had heard my head chef say, like, "Fire 2 steaks, medium rare. Get me 2 sides of mashed potatoes on the fly. We're 86 on shrimp, switch to scallops." Step 2. I used a mirror to watch my expressions. I noticed that chefs use body language and strong eye contact to show confidence. I practiced standing tall, making eye contact, and not lowering my voice at the end of sentences. Step 3. I started small in the kitchen. I started by giving small instructions to my coworker, Luis, who spoke Spanish like me. Instead of waiting for orders, I said, "Luis, I need 2 pastas all day." At first, my voice was shaky, but Luis nodded and followed my instruction. That gave me confidence. Little by little, I started feeling more natural when speaking. My first time taking charge. A few weeks later, we had a crazy busy dinner rush. The head chef was dealing with a problem, and suddenly, a waiter ran into the kitchen and called out, "We need 3 steaks, 1 rare, 2 medium, plus 2 sides of mashed potatoes on the fly." Normally, I would have waited for confirmation, but this time I turned to my team and without thinking said, "Luis, fire 3 steaks, mediums first, then rare. Joe, drop 2 mashed potatoes now." No hesitation, no second guessing. For the first time, I took control of my station like a real chef. James, the head chef, overheard me and smirked. "Finally, Isabella. That's how you talk in a kitchen." It was the first time he had ever complimented me. That's when I knew I had found my voice. What I learned about speaking with confidence. That night, I wrote down 3 things I had learned. Confidence comes from practice, not perfection. Speaking clearly and directly is more important than speaking perfectly. Your voice matters. If you speak like a leader, people will follow. I had mastered taking orders, understanding fast speech, and now giving commands. But my final challenge was coming: handling customer complaints and speaking professionally in English. Episode 4: Handling customer complaints in English. I had learned how to understand fast English, follow orders, and even give commands with confidence in the kitchen. But there was still one area where I struggled talking to customers. As a chef, I mostly stayed in the kitchen, but sometimes customers sent back food, had complaints, or asked to speak to the chef. This was different from kitchen English. I couldn't just say 86 that, or fire another steak. I had to be polite, professional, and calm. The first time I had to handle a customer complaint, I completely failed. My first awkward customer interaction. One night, during a busy dinner service, a waiter ran into the kitchen and said, "Table 12 is complaining about their salmon, it's overcooked. They want to talk to the chef." I panicked. I had never spoken to a customer in English before. The kitchen was my comfort zone, but now I had to step out into the dining room and explain myself to a paying customer. I walked over to the table, took a deep breath, and said, "Hello, what is the problem?" The customer frowned. "The salmon is dry. I ordered it medium, but it's well done." I felt my face get hot. I didn't know what to say. I just mumbled, "Oh, I'm sorry. I will fix." I grabbed the plate and ran back into the kitchen. It was embarrassing. I knew I had to learn how to speak to customers the same way I had learned to command my team in the kitchen. Training myself to speak professionally. I went home that night and wrote a list of phrases I had heard other chefs use when speaking to customers. I practiced them out loud every night, just like I had practiced kitchen commands. Some of the most useful ones were, "I'm so sorry about that. Let me fix it for you right away. I understand your concern. Would you like me to prepare another dish? I appreciate your feedback. I'll make sure this doesn't happen again. I'll personally take care of this. Thank you for letting me know." Instead of just saying sorry and running away, I needed to stay calm, take responsibility, and offer a solution. The moment I handled my first complaint with confidence. A week later, another customer sent back a dish. This time, it was a steak that was too rare. The waiter said, "Table 6 wants the steak cooked more. They're unhappy." I took a deep breath and walked over. Instead of feeling nervous, I remembered my training and spoke with confidence. "I'm so sorry about that. Let me fix it for you right away. Would you like it medium or medium well?" "I'm so sorry about that. Let me fix it for you right away. Would you like it medium or medium well?" The customer smiled. "Medium well, please. Thanks." I went back to the kitchen, adjusted the steak, and personally delivered it back to the table. The customer took a bite and said, "Perfect. Thanks for fixing it." That's when I realized, handling a complaint isn't about avoiding mistakes, it's about fixing them professionally. That night, I wrote down 3 things that helped me become confident in professional English. Stay calm. Your tone is more important than your words. Use polite phrases that make customers feel heard. Mistakes happen, but how you handle them shows your professionalism. I had conquered my final challenge. I was now fully confident in my English, not just in the kitchen, but in every part of my job. But there was still one final moment that proved to me that I had truly mastered English, and it was something I never expected. Episode 5. The moment I knew I was fluent. I had spent months training my ears for fast English, learning to give orders, and handling customers professionally. I thought fluency would come in the kitchen, but I was wrong. I realized I was truly fluent outside of work, in a moment I never expected. One night after work, I was exhausted. I had just finished a 12-hour shift, and all I wanted was some good food that I didn't have to cook myself. So I went to my favorite taco truck in Brooklyn. The guy taking orders, Leo, was always friendly. I had seen him before, but we had never really talked. That night, as I waited for my food, he looked at me and said, "Long day at work?" Without even thinking, I sighed and said, "Yeah, crazy dinner rush. We ran out of salmon, and the grill caught fire for a second. And don't even get me started on table for sending back their steak 3 times. Leo laughed. "Man, sounds rough. You need an extra taco for that. That's when it hit me. I had just told a story. Naturally, without translating, without hesitating, without thinking about English at all. Fluency is about comfort, not perfection. I used to think fluency meant never making mistakes, knowing every word and speaking perfectly. But that night at the taco truck, I realized the truth. Fluency isn't about speaking perfectly. It's about speaking naturally. It's when you can have a real conversation without thinking. It's when you stop learning English and just start using it. I wasn't worried about grammar. I wasn't searching for the right words. I was just talking, laughing, and connecting, just like I would in Portuguese. My journey wasn't about textbooks, grammar drills, or memorizing vocabulary lists. I trained my ear by listening every day in a real environment. I practiced speaking until I sounded confident, even when I wasn't. I made mistakes, but I kept going. And in the end, fluency came not when I was thinking about it, but when I had forgotten about it completely. So if you're learning English, don't wait until you feel ready. Start using it now. Because one day when you least expect it, you'll realize you're fluent. This is the final episode of my journey, but your journey is just beginning. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and most importantly, enjoy the process.